Hi there, Paul Thompson here from Spitfire Audio. You're listening to Abbey Road 1, Orchestral Foundations. This is the beginning of a very exciting new collaboration which we're making with Abbey Road Studios. A full symphony-sized orchestra recorded in sections in the incredible space of Studio 1, which for the last 40 years has been the home to many of the most successful blockbuster film score sessions of all time. So this is the full orchestra recorded all together apart from the percussion. So you've got the strings, the brass and the woodwinds. It's orchestrated really beautifully across the whole keyboard. So wherever you play, there'll be the perfect blend of instruments and it all locks together really nicely. So in addition to the staccato or short notes that you heard at the beginning, we also have these beautiful long notes. And these go, as you can hear, from a really delicate, soft, warm, rich sound all the way up to a really blistering, loud sound. We also have 3 different lengths of swells, which are incredibly useful as well. So if we look in the browser view, you can see that the full orchestra is at the top, followed by the string section split into 2 patches, high strings and low strings. The brass is presented in 3 sections, the trumpets at the very top, the horns occupying this fantastic strong middle section, and then low brass is everything from trombones down. We've got the high woods and low woods, and then the percussion is split into various different sections. So let's jump onto the high strings next. Now, as you can see, as I'm moving the controller for dynamics here and the expression controller, which acts just as a volume, an overall volume control, I'm getting a really amazing range of dynamics. This is the most detailed ensemble library that we've ever made. Have a listen all the way through the range. You also have control over the vibrato of the strings. Check this out. So as you can see, we're getting a really smooth gradation between the very non-vibrato, very still sound at the bottom of that range, all the way up to the rich, full vibrato sound at the top of the range there. Have a listen to the strings with mutes or con sordino. And at the end there, you can hear that I bring the vibrato level gradually down to non-vibrato. So we end on that really beautiful still sound. Across the whole range, this is a really beautiful patch. Just have a listen. So even with the mutes applied to cut down the vibration on the bridge, you still get an incredibly intense and very passionate sound. We have a fantastic tremolo sound, which is produced by moving the bow backwards and forwards very quickly. These fantastic spiccatos, very short sound. So as you can hear, an incredibly wide range there. And finally in this patch, a really bright, playful pizzicato plucked string. So let's check out the low strings. And again, with the mutes attached, we get this beautiful muted sound. So if we just pull the dynamic down to halfway and just check out this non-vibrato sound moving into vibrato. So using that can really give you an extra dimension to your music. We have the same fabulous tremolo sound. Which also goes down to whisper quiet. A really fantastic beefy spiccato. With that huge dynamic range, and also our cheeky pizzicato. So let's go back to spiccato and then have a look at the microphones. Now you've got a massive array of microphone options in here. And also what we're listening to at the moment is an incredible mix, which was put together by the recording engineer, mix engineer, Simon Rhodes. Simon has won many Grammys, has recorded a huge number of enormous blockbuster films, including Avatar, the second largest grossing film of all time, the first Harry Potter film, loads and loads of incredible scores. So what you've got here is his kind of preferred mix out of the box, and it sounds incredible. But let's have a look at some other options. So if we look at mix 2, as you can hear, it's a very, very different balance of sound, but it's still really, really kind of full and punchy. We've got two fantastic vintage signals here as well. Check out the manual to see exactly what equipment was used for each one. But Abbey Road is somewhere that has an amazing history. Their engineers invented a lot of the techniques, microphones, recording methodology that we now take for granted. And so their collection of equipment from over the years is simply extraordinary. So here's the first vintage signal. So although you can hear that kind of colour in the sound, it still sounds absolutely pristine. And here's the second. Now I've moved across to the high strings spiccato patch, and we can have a listen to a few more mixes. So the pop close mix here. So you can hear it's a very, very tight focused sound, and it doesn't have very much of the ambience in the signal. Here's the pop room sound. So this is the kind of the rest of the ambience. Now if we combine these two together, you can hear that you've got that really punchy pop sound, but you can also add in just the amount of the room that you want. And if I play while I'm adjusting the signal, you'll see what I mean. You can hear there the amount of ambience varying as we move the fader up and down. And the second page of mic signals, this might look a little bit more familiar to people who've used some of our past products. We've got the standard close seated position, and then we've got two different decker trees, our ambience and outriggers, and then also some spill mics. So I'm going to show you these all very quickly. Here are the close mics. Here's the first decker tree. And the second. Here are the ambient mics. These are the most distant mics and capture really the kind of back of the room sound. Here are the outrigger mics, which are the kind of wide element that's sometimes added to the tree to make it sound slightly more widescreen, but on their own they sound really great. And finally, the spill mics. Now, what this means is that this is a mix of all of the other sections of the orchestra's microphones, not including the section that you're currently playing. And it gives a really valuable extra sound. That spill that goes into the other mics while that section are playing is actually a really useful combination sound to add in to get a kind of an element of 3D to the sound. It's very difficult to describe, but when you hear it with and without, let's show. We'll put up a quick mix with the close, the tree, and the outriggers. And I'll turn the spill mics off first of all. And back on. And as you can hear, that's kind of filled in the soundstage somehow. It's a really interesting phenomenon. Let's look at the trumpets. So we're back on mix 1, Simon's main mix. So as you can hear, you've got a very wide dynamic range there as well. If we go on to the short notes, now these are incredibly tight and it's really easy to do these kind of fanfare type figures with them. Next up, we have a really fantastic strong marcato kind of punched attack short. The beauty of the programming on these, if you look in this little extra menu here, are the varieties of options that you have for the releases. So you can have no short releases, in other words, it just plays as a one shot all the way to the end, or you can have timed or untimed. Now we've got timed short releases on at the moment, which means that if I let go of the note before that full sample has finished playing, it simply stops and you get that beautiful tail of the ambience of the room. So it really doesn't restrict what you're playing. A really useful middle point between these two kind of extremes, this very, very short staccato and this lovely kind of longer punched out marcato, is an accent called a tenuto. And like all of these, they are velocity sensitive. They react to how hard you press the keys. So you've got various different recorded versions of these. And again, I can let go of these before the end of the note. So you can combine these really easily. I've just set up a quick key switch patch here so I can switch between the 3 different types of short note. And create really musical parts incredibly quickly and easily. Again, we have some fantastic swells. So let's move from the 4-player trumpet section onto the 4-player horn section. This is the middle kind of voice of the brass. So you can see there you've got a really wide dynamic range here as well. And again, these very, very agile, very short staccatissimo notes. But also when you play very quietly, it's still very agile there with that very soft sound. In this menu here, you also have the opportunity to change the way that the keyboard reacts to your playing. So you can also compress the dynamics really towards the low end, so it's much easier to play these quiet notes. Or to the high end, so that you can play really, really loud without having to hammer the keyboard quite as hard. Again, we have this fabulous marcato, tenuto, and the swells as before. Now let's move into our low brass section. So as I said, everything from the trombones down. This section is actually made of 8 players. So you have 3 tenor trombones, 2 bass trombones, 1 contrabass trombone, and then tuba and contrabass tuba. And you can get a really beautifully soft sound out of it, but also an immensely powerful roar. And that's reflected in the short notes as well, where we can go from these really lovely going from that really delicate kind of tiny little puffs of air all the way up. So we've got these amazing marcatos. Really stately, beautiful, powerful, rich sound, but also you can play them quietly. So you've got a full range of dynamic in there. And then these amazing tenutos, that middle stage between staccato and marcato. And again, full range of dynamic, but a really powerful, punchy sound there. Again, we've got these fantastic 3 different lengths of swell. Let's check out the high woodwinds next. So the lineup of our woodwind section from the top to the bottom, and again beautifully orchestrated so that it blends all the way across the range, is piccolo, 2 flutes, 2 oboes and a cor anglais, 2 clarinets and a bass clarinet, bassoon and contrabassoon. And again, you've got this if I go right down to the very bottom of the dynamic range, And if we go right to the top, then you hear the oboes really kind of pushing through there with our staccatissimo, very short notes. So you can hear you've got that really great dynamic. So you can really get very, very musical parts out of these. The marcato again has that accented start and is slightly longer. But still very dynamic. And then the tenutos. And of course, as before, our swells. So what about the low woods? Well, the low woods and the high woods cross over in the middle, but it's orchestrated differently. So you've got two choices of colour around the kind of middle C area of the keyboard. Have a listen. So you can get a really lovely kind of choral sound here. And let's just dial into these microphones. Let's turn off that mix and have a listen to the pop close sound. Now, what's the difference between that pop close sound and the more orchestral, if you like, close sound? Two incredibly useful, but very, very different close signals there. Let's go back to our main mix and check out these incredible staccattissimos, these very short notes. Now in these low woodwinds, we have these great punchy marcatos. And these fantastic swells as before. So let's check out this fantastic percussion section. So for this fabulous multiplayer percussion section, you have a wide range of sounds, all aimed at being absolutely cinematic, but all recorded with a real depth of sampling, lots and lots of dynamics in here. Let's start with a staple of the cinematic genre, the soft boom. Now, it doesn't take much to recognize that sound. And again, you've got lots of different mics, so you can really dial in there and shape the sound to your needs. More traditionally, we have two different sections of bass drums. Here are our standard bass drums. As you can hear, very dynamic, but also different playing styles, different articulations, slightly different, some muted, just to give you a really wide variety of sound. We've got a collection of Verdi drums as well, these kind of bigger, looser bass drums. So you can hear there, again, the wide dynamic. You've also got different articulations for these as well. Let's move on to our toms. Again, multiplayer patches, so multiple players hitting the toms at the same time, but we've then tuned the toms so you've got a kind of low, mid and high. Now these are also different sizes as well, so it's really picking the best tool for the job. And again, they're super wide range of dynamics. We've compiled a bass and snare patch. Might sound a little bit odd, but actually when you're playing it, it really sounds great. And again, these were drums matched to each other to get that cinematic sound, that sound that we recognize from so many scores. And here a blend of concert toms and octobands, again tuned to match each other, but also provide a really great kind of cluster sound. And again, these are great for these kind of impact parts. And you can go so quiet on these. It's absolutely great. Let's check out our snares. So again, a multiplayer snare patch, but with the standard open snares. Also with the stick shot sound. And finally the rims. We've got these great collection of octobands, again tuned from low to high. And you can play them two-handed as well. As you can hear, you've got super wide dynamic range as well there. Here's our alternative snares, the piccolo snares, much smaller than the others and have a tighter, higher sound. Again, you can go super quiet with those. Orchestral piatti, these are the handheld cymbals that you see at the back of the orchestra being clashed together. And again, a hugely wide range of different playing styles. Suspended cymbals. I won't go on, you get the idea. Again, lots of dynamics, lots of different sounds in there. One of my favorite sounds in the percussion section, the tam-tam. This is a kind of gong, big orchestral gong. So you've got that muted as well as just ringing out, and again, lots of dynamics. We've got these metallic ribbon crashers. Very useful percussion sound there. And finally, the anvil. Again, a real staple of film score sound. So after the percussion patch, we also have drums and metals. These are really subdivisions of that patch. So all of the drum sounds together and then all of the metallic sounds together. So you can load up just the one or the other in a patch. But we have this fantastic tuned section as well. First up, the Glock. Then the xylophone. Again, a nice wide dynamic range. Finally, the timpani hits. Last up, some really useful ensemble patches that just contain all of the sounds laid across the keyboard. So really useful if you want to just grab a couple of sounds and make a new rhythm very, very quickly. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this brief look at the beginnings of our new collaboration with Abbey Road Studios. Keep an eye on the website, there's a lot of information on there, but also we'll be putting up more information on our social channels as the project progresses. Goodbye.